Hello, this is Teacher at Home. Today I want to give you a book review, and the book I'm reviewing is, that's right, It's Kind of a Funny Story by Ned Vizzini. This is a very compelling book about a suicidal 15-year-old. Now, in the beginning of the book, he works really hard, and you get a sense of the way his mind works. And he stresses a great deal and he gets into a very challenging high school. And then when he's attending this very challenging high school, even though he has solid grades, he feels overwhelmed. And the nature of the stress in his life overwhelms him to the point where he decides that he's really not okay. Ultimately, the character Craig checks himself into the psychiatric hospital because he is suicidal. Because the teen ward is under construction, they place him with the adults. And this book is about Craig engaging with the adults in the psych ward, plus the doctors and the nurses, as he kind of works through his manic or his mania from his suicidal thoughts to a place of healing. And so in the book ends up in a very good place for Craig. However, um, the author, Ned Vizzini, ultimately did himself commit suicide. And this book does res- kind of follow when he was a teenager and he checked himself in to a hospital as well. And so there's some very fine insight into the head of a suicidal teenager, and we really see it really can have absolutely nothing to do with the parents. At least in Craig's case, he has everything, and yet he is overwhelmed by stress, and that stress nearly causes him to take his own life. But he doesn't, and instead he takes these suicidal ideations and enters the hospital, where he engages with various people. Now, prior to entering the hospital, as his stress is overwhelming him, uh, Craig does hang out with kids and they start to smoke a lot of pot. So the book does have drug use, and I think parents need to be aware of that. Also, because it's written from the point of view of a 15-year-old boy, it's kind of a frustrated 15-year-old boy, if you know what I mean. And so there is quite a bit of 15-year-old sexual ideation in there as well. Um, some passages that parents might not be particularly comfortable with. I don't think I would ask my 14-year-old daughter to read this book. And if a teacher were to assign this book, I think it's valid to ask and say, this book has some mature themes and there's drug use and there's some sexuality, some teen sexuality. And so the question is that really appropriate from the classroom? Now, I will leave that up to the parent to see your comfort level. It's not like over the top horrible, but I personally, with my sheltered kids, I would feel a little bit uncomfortable um, giving them this book. And I would not assign it in a classroom because of the drug use and because of the sexual stuff that's in the book. But the kids, if they take it out from the school library, where they can probably get it, or if they take it out from the public library, it's a high interest book for kids because it doesn't treat kids like babies. It's not a fantasy book, it's not a vampire book. It's a book that deals with real world issues, and a lot of teenagers, they really want to read a book like this. So, keeping that in mind, if you see your kid reading this, be aware that there are some mature themes in there and some mature behaviors, but also be aware that if a kid chooses this book, it's an indication that they don't really want to read The Hobbit or Twilight or anything like that. They're moving on to more kind of real world, um, heady stuff that deals with characters confronting very real world issues of emotional stress. Okay, it is a compelling read. Where I work in Los Angeles Unified School District, this book is assigned to 10th graders who are English learners of a certain achievement level. So the idea is that this is a book that will encourage the kids to keep reading because they'll be interested in what happens in the book. So that will help them improve their English language skills. That's how LAUSD assigns the book and uses the book, and your school district or your teacher might have a different way of doing it. But it's a popular book. It's a good book, but there are some mature issues in there that parents, I think, should be aware of. So that's it. I don't give stars, 4 stars, 5 stars. I don't give grades of how much inappropriate stuff there is. There's just some, it's not overwhelming, but parents should be aware. So if you have any comments, please write them down below in the chat or let me know, like, share, subscribe. You know the drill. This is Teacher at Home, and I hope you enjoyed my book review of Ned Vizzini's It's Kind of a Funny Story.